For many people, a lot happens in their 30s. It's a decade marked by expansion in almost all realms of one's life: marriage, children, caregiving, workplace responsibilities, social obligations. There is action on all fronts. It's an intense phase in exploration of identities, roles, purpose, and commitments. Being married for a few years, should I have children now? How do I raise a child in a world full of strife? Will I be able to fulfill my caregiving responsibilities towards my parents? What about anxieties of workplace, especially the fear of possible job loss in context of current economic uncertainties? How do I cope with my self-doubts of being good enough or not? What about my needs of affirmation across various life roles? Where is my sense of self-worth anchored? To explore these questions and more, here is a conversation with Manas Karambelkar, an interaction designer who currently lives in Bengaluru and works for one of the world's largest internet companies in AI, online advertising, cloud computing, and search technology. His desire to seek new experiences and curiosity to always ask why led him to the field of design, a field that is a perfect blend of science, arts, and humanities. Welcome back, Manas, to this episode of Wings Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Milin. Nice to be back here.
I distinctly remember we had you first as the last episode of season 1, which was aired on the 24th June 2022. And your episode was titled Think, Feel, Act. In that podcast conversation that you and I had, Manas, we explored your personal story about your childhood, your growing up years in Chalisgaon, Maharashtra, and then your further schooling in Pune, and then your higher education in the field of design, where you went to Denmark, and which in many ways is considered as one of the most reputed, global capitals of design education in the world today. We also spoke in that episode about you getting married, having your own family, etc. So that's where we left off when we spoke last.
Yes.
This conversation will continue on that. But before we move on to the next phase, let me quickly hear from you. How was that episode received by your family, your friends, your colleagues, whoever listened to our conversation then?
Yeah, I think it was really good conversation for me to reflect on my own life journey, as well as for others to get to know me in a different way. So even my friends or family members who were not, uh, like who did not have the idea about the process I went through for getting married, or what actually design is, and it is very difficult to explain to everyone to what I actually do. So that conversation really made it simple and opened it up for them, and it was a good conversation for me as well to reflect on my own life.
So let's connect to where we left off in that conversation, and to our guests who are listening on this conversation, I would request you, if if it interests you, to listen to my conversation with Manas, an episode titled Think, Feel, Act, that was released on the Wings podcast on 24th June 2022. So Manas, you are married now for I think close to 5 years, and you live in Bangalore. You work as an interaction designer in a leading technology company, global company. And I think it is at this stage, especially young urban Indians do look for having a family of their own in terms of thinking and planning for a child. So
Yes.
if I could ask you, how is that phase happening for you?
Yes, that phase has started in the form of contemplation. Every decision has its own journey that you go through for any big decision, like being aware of it, contemplating about it, and finally making a decision. So I'm still in that contemplation phase, moving towards making some decision. That's why I thought it will be a good topic to discuss. I have lots of questions, but very few answers, or actually no answers at all. I'm trying to find answers to these questions to be certain of the decision I'm about to make. As you said, being married, being in early 30's, having a fairly stable job, always the next question comes is when is the family growing? When the kids are coming. Not just from the family, but people other than the family as well. It's a feature of Indian society, right? So everyone is curious about that. So I'm in that contemplation phase with my wife and trying to understand how do we go about this.
So what sort of questions are there on your mind in terms of
Right.
having a kid in the times that we live today?
Yeah, there are multiple factors that we are thinking through. Personally, for us, we are trying to understand why does it matter for us, or does it even matter that we have kids, and how our life will change because of that, and are we ready for that? It may not be necessary that we will be 100% ready, but are we ready to make those changes when it happens? And what would be reason enough for us to have a child? Everybody has their own reasons, right? Like, and it is such a personal choice that there is no right or wrong reason for having or not having kids. For some, it is just a natural next step. Why else would you get married, right? For other, it is having some support when you grow old and cannot take care of yourself. For some, it is more about you'll get bored as a couple if you don't have a child. There are so many reasons I hear, right? Like we speak to many people who have kids, people who don't have kids, as in like they chose not to have kids, to understand how their life is now, what they think about their choices. But finally, it is going to be our personal choice. And I think even in that, it is not about justifying it to anyone else, but more about being assured about it ourselves and being aligned in that decision. So that is the first question, which is more on a personal level. Then about the society level, like what the current environment is, and whether that is a right environment to grow a child in, or how we can make it the right environment for the kid that would come in this world because of us, because that kid did not choose to be there, right? Like we chose that the kid should be born, and then it is our responsibility to provide the right environment for that child to grow, thrive, and become a part of the society and contributing to it. So, with the current environment, there are few questions that come to mind about how it will play out. Yeah, like factors like one aspect is the environmental aspect that we know with the population there is a lot of strain on all the resources that are being consumed, and having a child is adding to that. So whether it is a wise choice to do it. On the other hand, as a society, we know the community or the society is built with people, and the more responsible contributing citizens we have, the better the society is. So, on the other hand, I feel it is people's responsibility to have kids who are grown in a responsible manner to become good citizens who can carry forward the country and the world in a better direction. And from both these perspectives, like political, religious, environmental, though we all have all these challenges today, when I think about the last century or even years before that, In that perspective, we are living in the best time ever, right? Like healthcare has improved, lifespan of people has improved. There are so many opportunities in terms of education, and technology advancements are happening that are like improving life overall. But definitely there are challenges in terms of all the polarizing happening in the society because of the political environment or cultural divide. Although we are all connected actually, but that connectivity is bringing more polarization than harmony. Yeah, I think some of those questions come to mind where when the kid goes out to school for the first time, what environment will they get exposed to? What different perspectives will they get exposed to, and how will they cope with that? What can we as parents do for them to have enough tools or have mindset to deal with that? Maybe like the contradictions or perspectives which are not similar to theirs, or even like forming perspectives, right? As a kid, you will not have opinions as such. You're like a sponge absorbing everything. So how do you choose what to absorb and what to let go? Um, so I think similar to my marriage journey, I will need to do a lot of reading and understanding of how parenting is actually done as we explore through this process as well.
No, I think what you've just said also is kind of triggering some thoughts in my mind. You're right, absolutely. The world that we live today, uh, there is this phrase called we live in something called a post-truth world, which
Mm,
basically means that nothing that we see or hear, either through our own senses directly or through what the various screens that we are observing and the apps that we are referring to are telling us, that whether what we are sensing is for real. Because let's be honest, I think we are living in a world where known to unknown to us, there are algorithms at the background which are at the heart and core of some of the social media apps that are a part of our everyday life. Um, you know,
right.
YouTube videos, for example, we just don't know whether what we are seeing is real or not. So, yes, in a way, it's scary that opinions which ideally should have been on our own are being formed or influenced by forces outside of us. And
Right.
especially kids which are born in times of today will only see that uh, multiply many times over when AI as a technology becomes all pervasive, becomes a part of everyday life, every moment. And we just don't know what sort of society will emerge. So, yes, in a way, I do share or resonate with the fear of whether should I have a child in the times that we live today or not. But coupled with that, Manas, science has also,
Right.
leapfrogged to such an extent that one can freeze one's sperm or eggs in some banks, which of course
Yeah.
very very expensive in most parts of the world. Even in the western part of the world, it is expensive. But that technology is available today. So biologically, as a body, you are aging, but you can still conceive a child at a later date. I don't know whether right or wrong, morality, but isn't that having a child also brings in a different kind of love between the man and the woman? It happened to me. I had my kid, my only child, many many years back, and it was when we were in the fifth year of our marriage, just like you.
Right.
And it brought the two of us, myself and Asha, much much closer than what we were before the kid was born. So, irrespective of whichever society or culture we live, but there is this universal truth that the kid brings the parents together. That's also a beautiful reality, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. And those are the things that we hear a lot. And I think it is something that you have to experience, and it is difficult to make somebody understand, right? Like, and it is for any love for that matter. But even this, I think, is something that has to be experienced to really understand. But yes, I know, and I've heard that from everyone. Like, in the beginning, it is a struggle in terms of like managing everything, but the joy of raising a family together surpasses all those struggles that you would go through, the sleepless nights, or all those things. um, Makes it worth it finally. Or not just finally, but overall, the because in the when you remember things, I think these small inconveniences are forgotten, and the joyful moments are something that stay with you. um, so, and I think even that struggle brings people together, right? Like, even when I was going through the marriage sort of decision, um, one of the things was to share your life story and share your challenges and things that you sort of went through, which actually brought us together, than like feeling sorry about each other or things like those. But I'm diverging. But I think, yes, you are right. It can definitely bring the couple together in a different way and build that love.
Also, Manas, you mentioned a little while ago, you are in your early to mid 30s, kind of the phase of life. And I think this is also
Right.
a phase where, depending upon when you were born to your parents, this
Yeah.
mid 30s also is a phase where, uh, whilst you're contemplating to have a child or not, or maybe you may even have a child who's probably a year or two old,
Yeah.
that is a stage also when you experience your own parents aging. Uh, you know,
Yes.
Probably they are in their early to mid 60s. And
Yes.
whilst you are wanting to create your own family, uh, the parents who have given birth to us are also aging, and that's another uh,
Yeah.
dimension of one's life in the mid 30s, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I have been thinking a lot more about that, especially because, I'm away from my parents. Even my wife is away from her parents. We are in Bangalore and they're in Mumbai, Chaisgaon. Um, and if you put it in perspective, like in the last, say, I moved out of my house when I was 10 years old. And since then, I have been like visiting home once or twice a year for like short durations for a week, 2 weeks, or a month. During COVID, I actually had opportunity to stay with them for a little longer, like 6 months. But when I say extrapolate that to rest of the years, it is a finite number of times that I'm going to meet them. And that is something which, like, uh, uh, makes me feel really uncomfortable. Like, what I can do more, how I can be more connected. And actually, our bond has definitely grown deeper over a period of time, because also, like, as a kid, I idealized my parents a lot. And but as I grew, I sort of saw the complete picture of them, in the sense of understood their flaws, not just their uh, good parts, which I idealized. But still, as a human being, I really love and adore them, um, despite all their, like, flaws, which I think are flaws, but they may not be. It's for somebody else. But um, so yeah, it's another tough sort of situation to be in. So I try to maximize every time I'm visiting family, or them visiting us, or even if it's just conversation on call. Um, Try to make it as uh, rich and meaningful as possible.
Let me pick on a very interesting thing that you said a little while ago, that this is also a stage in one's life. And I think this will happen for a man and woman equally, maybe in different shades or different intensities. But I think this mid 30s or maybe mid to late 30s, when you are a man in your own right, or you are a woman in your own right, you form a certain identity
Right.
of oneself, build certain values
Right.
and beliefs over the lived life. And when you look at your own parents, you talked about, your wife parents being in Mumbai and your own parents living in Chalisgaon, and the two of you in Bangalore. But other than the physical distance, for many a young men and women, I have also experienced that there is a psychological distance that also gets amplified at this stage in life. It all depends upon how the upbringing has been. And I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest that we come from a time of India where our parents, by and large, would have at least two, if not three kids. Uh, you know,
Mm.
Especially the urban or semi-urban middle
Yeah.
class in India. Irrespective of whichever part of India that you talk of, those who are in their mid to late 60s, our parents, would invariably have two to three kids. And those kids were born in their 80s and 90s, where
Right.
life was not easy. India of that stage, there were not many job opportunities or economic growth opportunities. So really, our parents, most of them, in most families, both of them would be working. They would be really working hard to make two ends meet. And the
Yes.
the care and attention that was required for growing up a child like you and me was not so easy. Maybe many of us grew in the hands of grandparents. So
Yes.
for many in the 30s today, whoever are experiencing a psychological distancing, I've heard with many that I feel abandoned by my parents. I was
Mm.
left at my uh, grandparents' place because my parents had to move cities for jobs and other things.
Right.
My schooling was different, and I used to miss my parents. Uh,
Right.
and for many, they form judgments and opinions which could even be harsh of their parents today.
Yes.
And I like the way you
Yes.
say
Yeah.
that you look at the brighter side and cherish those, and appreciate and
Yes.
understanding our parents as man and woman in their own right, who made choices and decisions in the context that they experienced.
Absolutely. And it's hard to imagine their context, though we like talk about it a lot, and still, like, I'm really fortunate to have them as parents to raise me to who I'm today. But you're you're right, like, that psychological distancing can also happen in many different ways, like in the context of raising kids that we were talking about earlier. um, Maybe our parents style of parenting was different than what we imagine it to be for our kids. And when we want to live as a family together, even those things may play out as uh, challenge or conflicting situations, right? And in our generation, like, for somebody who, like, after growing up, realized that maybe the way my parenting was done wasn't right, people go either of two ways, right? Like, you either sort of go into that same cycle and inflict the same things on your kid, or because you know what you went through, you choose another path and try something new. And that's where you don't want, you know maybe, like, of course, grandparents is a great support to have, uh, raising kids, having, um, them contribute to their upbringing in terms of culture and everything. But those conflicts in terms of parenting styles can also be quite challenging or like distancing.
You're right. I mean, I have heard a comment from many young Indians or young people, let me put it this way, where who have experienced psychological distancing in their early childhood days to the extent of saying that I felt abandoned. And
mm,
for quite a few, the coping with that abandonment seems to be being very possessive of their child to the extent of
yes,
really
yeah,
smothering them, and not
yes,
giving them any freedom in their growth. So this is a very interesting psychological process where abandonment that I have experienced when I was growing up, I compensate that by taking possession of my child in totality.
yes. And yeah, I just remembered one thing. When I go in the morning to gym, I always see parents dropping off kids to school bus, and one day I just observed that they have they now have like apps where you can GPS track the bus to know whether the kid is on the bus or not, and where they got off and all those things. And I just remembered as a kid, I was studying in Pune in hostel, like staying in hostel, and my family was in Charisgaon. And every Ganpati or Diwali or any vacation, I would go to the railway reservation center, fill out a form, make reservation in second class sleeper train as a 10-year-old, and then go take a train on my own, travel for 5 hours, 6 hours, and reach home. And I asked my father, like, how did you handle that situation? Like, were you not scared that I'll get lost or somebody will, uh, you know, like kidnap me or something like that? But he said, like, I, I don't know, like he said, I trusted you, and I never felt that, or like I would have managed it if something had happened, I would have found you out or something. But it is very bizarre to think of that now in today's world where people are so like possessive about everything with their kids.
No, no, you're right. I mean,
Ah,
probably it wasn't such a connected world then, unlike what it is today.
yeah,
Maybe if there is, Apple Watch on the kid's wrist, you can actually track the kid's movement and just about everything. You know, uh, and those were not available then. But what you said about your father, who said that I trusted you that you will take care of yourself, which is such a big
yeah,
thing, right? I mean, for a 10-year-old child to hear from the father that I trusted you that you will take care of yourself, it kind of gives a sense of empowerment, a sense of ownership of
yes,
oneself. Um, Unlike you tracking the kid every moment and every step. So, Manas, in addition to thinking of having your own child at this age, which is around this mid 30s or so, or for many, they would already have a kid, maybe a year or 2 or 3 year old. But this is also a phase, as I said a little while ago, that you are experiencing your own parents aging. So the caregiver in us is actually,
yes,
I feel, drawn in both the direction. Caregiving of a certain kind with our kids, and a caregiving of a very different nature vis-a-vis our parents or even in-laws who are also aging at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And like some people say, right, old age is like second childhood. So there are, of course, as people like grow old, they want to live life the way they want and not be constrained by all the things they had to, go through their adult life. So I think there is that little bit of stubbornness. Um, but other than the behavior part of it, I think the health deterioration is even bigger part of that second childhood. You're not able to do things on your own, and you need support from people around you. I remember my grandfather in his in his late 80s. He really suffered a lot through multiple conditions because of neurological degeneration. He had Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and everything together, which really made him immobile and stuck to the bed. And the toughest part was him not remembering any of us towards the end of his life. He won't recognize my father, me, or anyone else. He would pretend to recognize us, but like you can sense it, um, which was like really tough. Even more tough or like tougher for my grandmother. He had to suffer through that for 6 years. Um, my father, the whole family took care of him as best as possible, but it was really challenging for them to go through. And I really fear that situation. I want to be there for my parents as much as they have been there for us. I don't know, like I have seen similar things with my friends and their parents and how they suffered. Um, yeah, I don't know like what is the answer to that. I don't know if there are any cultures where this sort of like people talk about euthanasia, right? Like if the person itself is not ready to go on, having some choice there. I don't know if that exists. I don't know how people think about it morally. And eh, because like in many cases not continuing to live is better than suffering through all these conditions. I don't know. Like those are the things.
No, but that's a very complex legal issue all over the world. I mean, of course, there are some countries who have legalized euthanasia, but yeah, for many young people who are seeing their parents aging, this sword is constantly dangling over their head. That how do I be the caregiver that I wish to be for my parents or for my in-laws, both, or those loved ones who are a part of their extended family whom I want to care for. And the problem probably gets amplified or multiplied if you are physically distanced. Whilst this is also happening at this stage of mid 30s, I think for many, if one looks at the concept of Maslow's need of Maslow's pyramid of need hierarchy, Abraham Maslow, the psychologist who thought about it, that this is also a phase in life where you are trying to create certain social connects. You are also looking for a sense of belonging or relatedness to circles which are different than yours, not just the family or the workplace, but maybe many people look for membership in some social organizations like Rotary or Lions or maybe some other groups that they associate themselves with. Uh, this whole forming of new relationship is also a very delicate phase, outside of one's comfort zone.
Yes. Uh, yeah. I think all these things seem connected. So yeah, like even when I was thinking about marriage, right, that's when I kept hearing like it's better to marry early and not later because then you form your opinions and become too stubborn and cannot adjust with somebody else and things like those. It's not just in marriage, but it plays out in all other relationships that you are trying to form. As a kid, it was really easy to form those friendships, even in school or college. It didn't take much to form the friendships, to maintain them over a period of time. Of course, I like only have handful of my friends who are still with me from my school, college. or even my previous workplace. It takes efforts to maintain those friendships, and it takes even greater effort to create new friendships, to really find that connect. I feel like today what happens is like I think we get too judgmental too quickly, even though there are many things that match, and many things that you want to enjoy together. If there is some misalignment even in one aspect of your opinions, it suddenly breaks apart, where you think, is it even worth maintaining this relationship? And when like clearly the other person has completely opposite point of view on something more, again, like culturally or politically, these things are even more prominent. So yeah, that has been a challenge for me, especially as an introvert. It takes a lot of effort and energy for me to go out and talk to somebody else, to even just like have a conversation, let alone form a friendship.
So, what sort of pushbacks have you experienced whenever you extended your hand to, I won't say strangers, but those who are still not acquainted much?
Right. I think, like, I don't know if it's true for everyone, but at least for me, with today's world where you have almost the entire day spent in office doing work, and when you get some free time, you want to spend it on yourself, or the way you want to spend it. So to meet someone, it's almost like getting an appointment with people to actually go out and do something, or there is a lot of planning involved even for that to happen. Um, so that is one. But I think, I don't know, like I haven't thought about it so much in terms of why things did not work out. But yeah, I think for me, I have been in a way content with all the friends that I have gathered over the period of time, and I sort of try to keep maintaining and building on top of those relationships.
No, it happens. I think it happens to many. They're, wanting to belong or connect to people who are from different walks of life is also a need for many. And, there are these so-called WhatsApp group, or, earlier there used to be Facebook groups. I don't know how much of that is popular even today, but then there are these subject matter groups where you kind of take a membership or join in, and for the first few days or weeks you are more in a listen mode, basically read mode of whatever is getting posted, and then you gather courage and express an opinion of yours on whatever is being spoken. And then there is always fear that how will I be received. Now I am, of course, well into my 30s. I shouldn't be having that fear of whether will I be received or not, but uh, social inclusion or social exclusion is such a difficult psychological process which plays, I think, for many. And then invariably, if there are pushback, and what you said is right. I mean, most conversation today is not about listening, but putting out my own opinion and making you accept it. All this conversation is about how I prove that I am right, more right than you are, and make you accept my point of view. And of course, for many, they feel a pushback, and it happens to me. I mean, many times. So I then kind of get onto the fence, or even go beyond the fence and prefer to stay outside. Uh, to the extent of saying that yes, I do have friends, but actually I do not have friends. Uh, is a is a interesting phenomena that is also getting played out in the times we live today. And what is also adding to all this is the uncertainty. Though there is economic growth that is being spoken about, there are many jobs out there, but for those who are having jobs, more and more jobs are not permanent employment kind of a situation. It's kind of, though you are employed, it's not a time bound contract, but then you can always be fired at a short notice, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, etc. And companies are not afraid of firing people if things are not going well for them. And I mean, for all you know, if they are listed on the stock market, where there are financial analysts who are reviewing them and their stock performance, the financial matrix seems to be driving every decision. So layoff or job layoff is something which is a reality of today's times. And then for
Yes.
many, I think, you work in an organization where there have been layoffs. And for many, I've also heard that many people feel that I am not good enough. That's why I have been laid off. It kind of puts a question mark on their self-worth, isn't it?
Definitely. And when these sort of like mass layoffs happen, I feel people don't find closure anywhere because they always receive the sort of a templated message that it is not uh, kind of like a breakup, right? It's not you, it's me sort of thing, and you don't have to worry about it. It's not about your performance. But no matter what, it takes a hit on people's self-worth and it takes away the psychological safety of others in the team as well. Because then you start fearing about yourself, even if you weren't hit this time, you never know when will the next round will happen, and so you're always in that anxiety of what will happen next. And a lot of it also is where like we tie our self-worth with the work that we do. That is the first thing we introduce ourselves with, and even like measure the success usually in those metrics only. Like what is your position in the company, how much salary do you earn, or what things do you own. But there are no metrics for other things that you can't as easily measure and talk about, which is uh, which is a challenge. And yeah, I think that also brings just like guilt of, or need for always being productive with every second of your life. And if you're doing something just for yourself, or if you're not doing anything at all and just you know just being by yourself somewhere, you start feeling guilty, like, am I wasting my time? Should I be doing something? I should be learning something new, or I should be building something new so that I stay relevant, I keep my job. Those sort of things start creeping in. And when you lose sort of sight of who you are, why are you here, and like what things actually matter in life. And yeah, I think overall that balance for like between your work and life sort of goes for a toss in those sort of situations.
Also, what I also find is, especially in this process of layoffs that happen, and you're right, people do feel judged, saying that I'm not good enough. And then how will it be received at home? How will my parents, or my
Yes.
wife or husband, or my immediate family? I mean, there have been enough and more examples. One reads today that there is this young girl who gave a birth to her first child, and within 2 weeks of the child being born, she gets an email in her inbox saying that you are no more employed. I mean, that's a shocker, isn't it? And it kind of plays differently on the minds of different people.
Yes. Yes. We make all these choices with certain assumptions in mind that this will continue to be true so that I can take this bet. I can make this choice in my life, and when that is taken away, it is completely like ground pulled off from under your feet. It also, I don't know if like then it becomes for you to like create yourself into a brand and market yourself so that you're always looking out for something, looking out for opportunities where, if this does not work out, I have something else, or, you like have a side hustle sort of thing. So you're always under that pressure, and then, somewhere I feel like people are not brands. And as a person, you should not be looking at yourself as a brand, but looking at building your character. Like, how should people remember you? So, yeah, I think it is a, yeah, well, it's a tough situation.
Bene Brown is one name which many people are familiar today, thanks to her very popular TED talks and some amazing books that she has written. And her road to fame came from a talk that she gave on the theme of vulnerability many years back. And I think, of course, that TED talk would have had probably a few 100 million views by now. There's an interesting thing that she mentioned towards the end of that talk, which was, I think, 15-16 minutes, probably not much. And then it became a craze where what she said also came printed on the t-shirts that many people were saying that you're not just good, but you're good enough, right? So this whole issue of self-worth that is getting questioned in the times that we live today, and especially when you are at a stage in life of mid-30s where your kids are very young, or you're planning to have kids, you have aging parents, you have a work environment which is very volatile, where and you're also trying to discover an identity for yourself, of who really I am. And it's a very tumultuous phase of life, isn't it? This decade of 30s.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's like so many uncertainties to think about and work with. It's quite yeah, overwhelming.
Yeah, and thankfully, to reduce the stress, we have the escape mechanisms like an OTT or a bar or a pub or some such things, though they are temporary in nature. I think that releases the pressure like the safety valve on a pressure cooker. It has its own place in one's life. That's also, I think, the reason why young people are getting attracted to such uh, attractions or distractions, whatever you may want to call it, as safety walls, which I think in some ways, despite what people say about it, they have an important role to play as well, right?
Yes, definitely. And I think not just OTT, like if you think about like how other creation platforms that are there for people to make something so easily, like say YouTube is flooded with so much content which people engage with even more than movies or TV in today's time, right? And somewhere it is connected with that as well. Like you would see a lot of growth in channels which are just about daily vlogs. Somebody talking about what their day was like and putting snippets of what they did throughout the day. And somewhere people start feeling that connection with that person, though they have never met them. And it is just that because, you are seeing them every day as if they are, your friend. So the earlier discussion we had that though you may not build like friendships in real world, you somewhere find that connection in all these different platforms and tools that are there today.
Yeah, I mean, we had in I think a third season, uh, a young guest who lives in the UK. He lives in the suburbs of London somewhere. He's a cyclist. He's decided that he's never going to own a car. He's going to bike his way to life. And he's cycled the length and breadth of the UK. He goes to the French Alps or the Sierra Nevada in Spain, and married guy, 6-year-old daughter, very well settled, in Indian, young Indian. And he was telling me about an app and a group that he's a member of, where there are a bunch of cyclists who choose to cycle together in the virtual world, let's say in some wilderness in Scotland. And they put on their AR glasses and log into the app at the same time, and they are cycling on their stationary bikes. And the app actually picks up all that, and they're, biking in a virtual environment. So these are also newer discoveries that are also happening to not only cope up with the challenges of everyday life, but also to discover new passions. So yeah, people are seeking experiences. So I think, Manas, I think this conversation, which is kind of going in all kinds of directions, we talked about the whole idea of should I have kids or not, looking after one's aging parents, and then looking after one's own set of self-worth, and also figuring out one's identity in the world that we are a part of today, all anchored around this one theme of how is life unfolding for me in my 30s, wherever I am. So, that's a beautiful conversation. I think, just wanted to hear from you how this meandering has been for you.
Yeah, I think that is a very apt word for it. It is meandering, because I really felt like the conversation was flowing whether we stuck to the topic or not. Besides that, I think it was very enjoyable to just, even speaking out these questions or thoughts. It's kind of therapeutic, because these things keep playing in your head, and when you speak them out, somewhere you get clarity. Somewhere you feel even just being heard gives you some sort of comfort that, yes, I have spoken it out. It's out in the world now, and somebody is hearing, and that is enough.
That's the whole idea of the season 4 of Wings podcast, Manas, where we are taking a leap of faith here. Unlike the first 3 seasons where we had over 75 Fridays, as many young Indians coming on the show and talking about themselves, who they are, what is their world, what are their roots, where have they come from, what is happening in their lives at the moment. But it was, the first 3 seasons were all about a person-centric conversation. And in season 4, as show producers, Arsha and I are taking a leap of faith to move the conversation from person centricity to what are the social, cultural, economic, political realities that young Indians are exploring and engaging with. Many themes that we spoke of in our conversation today. And the whole idea, again, over here is not to find answers to any questions, because for each one, the questions are their own, then answers will also be of their own in their own context. But through conversations like what you and I have had just now, the wish and hope is to build perspectives or to share perspectives. So thank you very much for this conversation. It's really been a joy and a pleasure.
Yes, same here.
Hope to see you sometime soon in person.
Definitely.
You take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only. and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75 at gmail.com. Thank you.